It's 5 after, 3:05 in LA, 6:05 on the East Coast. And what time in Kenya?
In Nairobi, it's 1:05 a.m., September 18th.
And what time is it in Cairo?
12:05 a.m., September 18th.
Labor of love. So I think that means we should probably get started. Hello, everyone. So thank you so much for gathering here with us today in the early morning or the afternoon or the evening, wherever you are. Thank you for being here. My name is Malika Bilal. I'm going to be moderating today's session, our panel with some fantastic panelists. And I just want to make sure, because we're all learning Zoom as we go along, right? We use it for work, but don't always use it for play. So since we're using it for play and work today, I want to make sure everyone can hear me. Raise your hand if you're an attendee, or message us in the chat if at any point you can't hear us, if someone got muted accidentally, if the video has dropped, do let us know. We're open to that, work in progress. And of course, I also want you to know that, as you well know, because we're all working from home and everyone is mostly home, it's a luxury, but it's also a strain on the resources. So if at any point the internet decides to not act well with us and internet droppages in Los Angeles, where there's fires and there's electricity rollouts, and so that has happened, or on the continent, please do allow for that. Don't panic though, please stay with us. The program will keep going and we will pick right back up whenever they're able to join us again. So with that said, welcome again. Thank you for being here. This is really going to be a laid back, informal chat, and it gives you a peek into what Statement Films is and what it is they're doing. And so much of that is embodied in the filmmaker that we have here today to talk to and with. And at the end of our chat, we're going to open it up for Q&A. And so if while the conversation is going, you all have questions that you're thinking of, please feel free to chat them in the chat box on Zoom there. We also would encourage you to turn your cameras on. We would love to see your faces. Of course, no pressure. We know how that goes. So if you're doing something else, don't worry about it. But when it comes time for the Q&A, if you write your questions in, we'll unmute you so that you can ask your questions. And really we can have that like organic participation that we all crave. So let's get started. We're going to start with a round robin introduction session. So in just 1 or 2 sentences, I want to have each of my panelists introduce themselves to our audience so everyone knows exactly who you are. So Areej, let's start with you.
Hi, I'm Areej Noor, and I'm looking at the people in the room, and this is really heartening to see. Thank you for joining us tonight. I'm the founder and CEO of Statement Films. Malika, should I say a little more about that now or wait a little?
Wait a little. That was great. That was just a little tease. Get him interested. Thanks, Areej. I'm pretty sure everyone here knows exactly who you are, but just in case. Azza, what about you?
Hi, my name is Azza Satti. I'm the creative director of Statement Films, and I am based in Nairobi.
Fantastic. Idil, your turn.
Hi, I'm Idil Ibrahim. I'm a filmmaker, and I'm based in New York.
Awesome. And for those who don't know me, my name is Malika Bilal. I am a journalist, usually based in Washington, D.C., but hanging out in Los Angeles for the pandemic. And I do this often, have conversations for a living. And so I hope that this is one that will be fruitful and that we'll all walk away from having learned something, but also having really enjoyed ourselves, because we do intend for it to be raw and open and real. And for that, we want to encourage everyone to really feel like you have the comfort and the ability to be your most true self and ask your most true questions. So let's get started with what is Statement Films, because that is the reason that we're all gathered here today. Azza and Areej, of course, can speak to this, but Areej, I'll go to you first.
Statement Films is a vision, it's an opportunity, and it's a promise. We invest in centering the storytelling, the narrative shaping, and the image making of African women, writers, and directors. Why African women in particular in this moment? These ladies have had an extraordinary couple of years in the film world. Every year, more films by African women directors, writers, a critical subset of filmmakers of color globally, this contingent. Their films are premiering, winning awards, they are getting distribution by major platforms at the world's biggest festivals, Sundance, Toronto, can. And so the moment is right now for African filmmakers to really articulate their narrative in a new way that makes an impact that we haven't seen before. And that, I think, is happening in a very particularly interesting way in film. I believe that film is truly the medium of African women creatives right now to say what they have to say and change the face of Africa, but also the stories that get told to the rest of the world about this continent that we love so dearly that has not always been shown in its truest light. So Statement Films is thrilled to be a part of that and do everything we can to support and really develop a sphere of influence around these African women filmmakers. You know, this is who we live for. We really want to create a robust community around them, and Idil is a prime example of the type of person that we will be in business with and supporting in every single way that we can as long as we're doing this.
So it probably goes without saying, but why Statement Films? Why that name?
I mean, you know me, so you know the answer. Because, I mean, I think that the work that comes from these ladies is always making a statement. And I want that work to continue to make really, really loud statements right now and forevermore. So we want to encourage that type of artistic, sort of ambitious art house cinema. We see a lot of it right now coming out of the continent. And again, women are leading the way.
We also see a lot of it, particularly coming out of Nairobi, which is where you're based, Azza. Can you talk to us about what the landscape is like there for creatives in Kenya, specifically in Nairobi, but also on the continent?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'll start with the continent. I think what has happened in the past 20 years has been a reverse brain drain. So people who have left because of conflict and wars with their parents in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, who were educated outside and abroad, have come back. And really they're part of like this ecosystem in terms of technology, agriculture, business, politics, and all of that. And I think the arts in particular has been a huge part of that change. And I think what has been really amazing and beautiful is seeing artists, designers, filmmakers, photographers in the continent, different cities, creating work, but also speaking to each other through the arts. And you have a lot of spaces that are opening, like the Zeitz Museum in Cape Town, and Black Rock by Kende Wiley in Dakar, and you have Makal, of course, in Marrakesh, in terms of that's pretty much the arts, but there's a lot of kind of building these institutions where usually we used to go abroad for them, but now we're building them here and having these artists actually creating beautiful works, residencies, exhibitions, films, and such. And particularly in Nairobi, I, in my experience in the past 20 years, has seen a lot of revival, especially in media, especially in fashion, especially in music, and of course, film. And we're seeing that boost really has been supported a lot, sometimes a lot by policies, because I think the governments are finally recognizing that the arts and culture is really bringing a huge part of the GDP of the country. So people are really like kind of looking at the arts and culture, not just as entertainment, but actually as a serious business. And I think Statement Films were coming really at the right time.
So you mentioned a revival. Idil, some might say you are single-handedly helping in that revival. You filmed at least 3 of your most recent projects in Kenya. So how did you get started? Talk to us about, you know, what led you to this field in the first place?
Well, I was one of those kids who would always sit in front of the TV screen. So whether it was television or film, that was like always on front and center in our household. So my love of film and my love of television started very early on, and then progressed because I had a cousin who managed a movie theater. And I would basically go on the weekends really early in the morning and stay screening after screening because I was allowed to. And that's where the genesis of it came. And in terms of the filmmaking on the continent, you know, as a Somali American, I have one foothold in the States, but I also have the other foot back home, if you will. And as a storyteller, though my family's from Somalia, a lot of the diaspora is in Kenya and in other countries, but I feel at home in many of the countries I visit. You know, I'm Pan-African in that way. And a lot of that scope lends itself and finds itself into my work. So I view myself as a Pan-African filmmaker. While based right now in the States, I'm always on a plane somewhere. And the beauty of that is that I've built wonderful relationships with filmmakers and other creatives, not only in Kenya, which is very robust, as Azza had said, but also in some of the other countries like Senegal and Morocco.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Malawi. You've shot in Malawi as well, all over. So this gives you a really good vantage point. What do you see are the differences for you as a filmmaker working on the continent versus, let's say, working here in the US?
You know, the difference is sometimes the gaze cultural approach to filmmaking, but also the actual act of filmmaking and production is very similar in the States and the continent in terms of there's a shared language of how to produce and execute and create a vision and bring it to life. And there's a shorthand with a lot of productions. And the more you do, the more you gain knowledge in that space. So for example, in Kenya, I mean, I'm always learning from my colleagues there because they just can get things done in a way that you might be slowed up in the States. You know, we're always problem solving on the continent and thinking creatively and outside the box. And not to say you don't have that in the States, but sometimes we get comfortable in ways that you have to be really creative and troubleshoot and make things happen. There's a lot of ingenuity on the continent, and it's inspiring, which is great because it inspires me on other sets, for example, if I'm in the States shooting, to think of creative ways to problem solve. Which is something that I've picked up when I'm on the continent.
So Areej and Azza, when it comes to creative problem solving, I imagine even in the setting up of this organization, there had to be a little bit of creativity to make it work. Talk to us about some of the things maybe your average person wouldn't realize would be challenges to making something like this happen. Because I know it's a labor, but it's a labor of love.
I'll start, as I also want you to take this question.
Yeah, of course.
So this company really, sort of the inception of this company has been sort of a couple of years in the making. And last year was when we made our sort of pivot to Africa in terms of specifying our focus. And so we actually just had our soft launch last week, and the team came together over the summer, as did some other critical elements of the business. And so, we did it all through COVID. And this is something that I always think to myself, it'll take me years to understand how this came together at this time in particular. I think it's been a tough year. We all know that, but there have been certain elements of everyone being home that have made this kind of go quicker than it would have been any other time. So we have our head of development is in Los Angeles, and Lila, I know you're in here. Hi, Lila Nordstrom, she's amazing. We have our head of business development, Pumi, in here as well. She's also in LA, hello. But then Azza and I are on the continent, and I'm in North Africa in Cairo. I didn't say that earlier. And then Azza's in Kenya. So, I don't sleep anymore because we've got half the team, on the West Coast. Azza and I do our calls in the morning and the afternoon, and then everybody that we're talking to on the continent sort of in between then. So yes, there's a lot of creative troubleshooting, and I would say that it is as elemental as internet connections. Every single day there's a story, but without them, we wouldn't have a business. But it's been, like I said, it's sort of a gift and a curse. I can't really say that I would have it any other way. It's come together really well for us so far.